In this video, I'm going to be talking about my research into existing thriller film storylines and ones that kind of relate into the idea I have of my storyline, and also ones that I've gathered inspiration from, maybe even in the slightest, to bring it all together to inspire me for my thriller film storyline for my thriller film trailer, which I will be producing. So, also I'll be looking into existing storylines from other thriller films to gather inspiration from my storyline, as well as find out what makes a good thriller film storyline in general, to kind of give me a wider knowledge on what the target audience expect to see and what makes a good thriller film in general and what gets good reviews from the critics of today. I'll be looking at some of the most influential storylines ever made, as well as some storylines from other genres to pick out aspects which are similar to my storyline idea, and some of them I've already based on, and also the reason to kind of widen to other genres, where there's only one that's another genre. The reason I wanted to widen out to this is because a big part of my inspiration came from this film. Yes, it's not a thriller film and not from the thriller film genre, but that does not stop the fact that I was inspired by it, and therefore I felt like it deserved to be mentioned in the research that I've been conducting into storylines of thriller films. In doing this, I hope to be inspired for my storyline, as well as add to the ideas I already have for my plotline of my thriller film trailer, to make it as good as that can be and entertaining for the audience, because obviously I already have a basis of an idea of what I want my storyline to be on, which we'll get into in the next video. But for now, that's kept a secret, and this all research is just adding into elements and ideas into my already existing storyline, which I've thought about, and overall to make it just a bit better and crisper, ready before I reveal my storyline to the general public and the target audience of my thriller film trailer. So the first thriller film I'm going to be talking about is Silence of the Lambs, as I do in many of my film researches, because I feel that Silence of the Lambs is such an inspirational thriller film, as well as one of the best thriller films ever made. It's one that I always take inspiration from and one that I'm always keen to talk about. So obviously Silence of the Lambs was released in 1991, and at the beginning of each film I will give a quick synopsis and plot outline of what happens in the film before I go on to talk about things that I would like to talk about within the film. So a young FBI candidate must confide in an incarcerated and manipulative killer to receive his help on catching another serial killer who skins his victims. So that was just a quick outline of what happens in the film, just in case you have not seen the film, and just so to refresh my memory personally on what happens in the film, though I have watched all these films recently in order to talk about this video. So this crime thriller takes an intense approach, focusing a lot on its storyline rather than its intense action. What I felt about this is that the storyline, a lot of thriller film storylines nowadays are turning into a lot like action films, focusing a lot on the action which happens in the film, and kind of the more focusing on just making people interested through explosions and chases and such things like that. Whereas Silence of the Lambs, obviously released over 20 years ago, 25 years ago in fact, in 1991, and it just takes more of, I felt it takes more of an approach to its storyline and fleshing out its characters and its storyline more so than the action. Because when you watch the film, there's not actually that much action in Silence of the Lambs. It's very much based on just the plot line of it. So obviously it's a very serious plot line, and there doesn't have to be lots of action, which makes it good. And in my opinion, I think the fact that this film does not need lots of action already shows that the film writers are onto something special here. But it's just something unique and something for me to look into, the fact that maybe action isn't always the way forward, but after doing some audience research on thriller films, it turns out that my target audience would like to see action. This does not take down Silence of the Lambs at all by meaning this is a bad film. So though the story has some graphic scenes and intense chases, its plot is focused on the film which they highlight in the trailer, with a deep, dark voiceover. Now this is like a voiceover. Back at the beginning of my research, I was not a big fan of voiceovers and didn't intend to use it. However, as I've come further through the research, I feel that voiceover may be a very good thing to include in my trailer. For a film like Silence of the Lambs, which used it, which has a very intense and developed storyline, This was a great way to convey the storyline to the audience, and I feel that with the way I am making films, something I suffered from my AS was not describing my full idea of the film. I feel that having a voiceover will allow me not to fall into this trap again and explain my film to the audience rather than leaving guessing like I did last year. The plot also relies on heavily on character development, making sure the audience is behind the protagonist and aware of the antagonist's behaviour and how dangerous they are. This allows the audience to connect with the characters, as well as building a bigger and better story. And I like this storyline, as I feel it brings the film together and creates a world, not just a film. It creates a world, not just a film from its developed characters, as well. And its fleshed out location makes it feel like it could actually be real, and especially considering the storyline of this trailer, having this seem like it could be real is a perfect way to market this film, because some storylines in thriller films are just for pure entertainment, others are based on true events, and others are based on entertainment which make their kind of impact and that's in suspense through the fact that it could be real. And Silence of the Lambs has a storyline which most definitely could be real, and in fact was inspired on true events, if I'm correct. So this film really can bring the audience in from all different aspects of thriller films. Just another reason why it's such a great film. And obviously I am inspired by the storyline to focus on my characters, making sure they are well fleshed out for the audience to relate to. In particular, my protagonist needs to be the most fleshed out. As long as people know a lot about my protagonist, they can get behind him. I feel that the antagonist and other members of the film can be more fleshed out further into the film when the film releases, but the trailer is about making the protagonist known and making the audience behind the protagonist, which I think is what a trailer is supposed to do. As long as it introduces you to the main character, kind of gets you liking that character from the get-go. Therefore, when the audience go to see the final film, they already know quite a bit about this character and what he intends to do. Therefore, they're not left guessing about what he does and what he doesn't do. Yes, there's still questions to be made about his character, especially the character I have in mind. However, it gives them a kind of acknowledgement to say, oh, I know that guy. It gives them a sense of comfort because they already have seen this character before on the screen and they know his intentions. I do not feel as I need to make such an intense and in-depth storyline like Silence of the Lambs did, but I'm inspired to put, because obviously time restrictions and because it's only a trailer and I'm a beginner filmmaker, but I am inspired to put a great thought into my storyline by still keeping in touch with the action and trailer as well, because obviously, as I explained earlier, that's what my target audience wants to see, so I can't lose too much of that action and focus too heavily on the storyline. However, overall, Silence of the Lambs is a great film, and it has inspired me to put a lot of thought into my storyline without overcomplicating it for my audience, to make sure they enjoy the characters, they enjoy the film, and so the trailer entices them to come and see the full film when it's released. So the next film I want to talk about is the one which I mentioned at the start, which is not technically a thriller film. The film is The Nice Guys. The Nice Guys released in 2016, earlier this year. And I have spoke about this much in depth, as it was one of my inspirational films for my trailer. And obviously, back then I say the same things I'm going to now, as the fact that the reason it inspired me was because of the characters and the storyline and so on and so forth. But also I want to talk about it again because it really has inspired me for my trailer. And yes, it's a comedy and action film, but it is actually a crime thriller as well. And though I do not think it can be seen as a thriller film, it could be justified if you tried, but at its core, it's an action comedy. However, that does not mean that I cannot be inspired by it, because obviously there is aspects of each genre in every genre. Obviously, there's going to be aspects of horror and thriller and action, so on and so forth. So I don't think this is such a bad thing. So, as again, I will give a plot synopsis. In 1970s Los Angeles, a mismatched pair of private eye investigators investigate a missing girl and the mysterious death of a porn star. So as I said, though The Nice Guys are more of an action crime film than a thriller film, the characters and the storyline were so strong in this film that it has inspired me massively on my thriller film trailer. So, and the movie has a comedic look on the private life of investigators, and whereas my thriller film trailer will take a more serious look at the situation. So obviously they have this being a comedy film. They're two of private investigators, and obviously there, because of the comedy film, they take a more comedic look of it. Make a few botches, you could say, where things like slapstick. There's also some witty lines. Whereas I'm prepared to make a more serious film. I feel like this will suit my target audience more, giving them something to concentrate on and get involved in. Yes, it's alright to laugh sometimes, but I feel like a thriller film at its core is not to be laughed at. It's to be taken as a serious piece of work and to be seen as something that audiences can connect with. And actually, though it's not a horror, it's the closest genre to horror. Therefore, it would be fine for the audience to maybe get a little bit scared as such. Maybe not scared visually like a horror film, but psychologically, a psychological thriller. And that's why how I'm changing this film up from their film to my film. So obviously, I'm not taking it as a comedy film as it is. I'm taking aspects of it which could be turned in to a thriller film rather than a comedy/action film. The storyline is based on two people who contradict each other, who need to get along to solve a case. Though I do not plan to have two protagonists in my film, I think it was a good idea for comedy in the film and result in funny moments, but that's just not what I'm going for. And yes, I did debate having two protagonists, but I feel if I want to create a more serious one, just having the one protagonist who's maybe misunderstood and maybe a bit mysterious could actually have more of an impact on my character development and more of an impact on the story in general. So therefore, instead of using this kind of comedy duo, it's just going to be the one guy soloing it, protecting people, as we'll get into in the next blog. But overall, it's the way just to kind of ease people in, just with this one guy which I can connect to. And obviously, I really like this storyline. I think it's a great idea. I think taking it, instead of making this a thriller film, taking it as a comedy action really made it work. I feel like the writers deserve a massive round of applause for making some of the witty lines, and the dialogue was just fabulous. And I have been inspired by this film, obviously, as I've said many a times, because of the story, because of the private eye investigators and the character Russell Crowe plays. It just all links into my vision of what I want to create. And because of that, The Nice Guys has massively inspired me from its storyline, and to create this kind of world where people did not this world they create is a very comedic one. It's inspired me to create a more serious world which could be based in the real world. I do pretend to set it in the world we live in. Yes, you can create your own little world within that, but I feel that having this guy, which could quite easily... There'll be aspects in it that are quite non-naturalistic for real life, to kind of give it that movie feel, that movie magic. But keeping it grounded will also help my audience to kind of appreciate the film and connect with the film more, and hopefully that will make them enjoy the trailer more, which will make them want to come and see the full film. The next film I want to talk about is The Dark Knight from 2008. And obviously this is based on a comic book. It's Batman, and it's a very good thriller film. Though people think it's a superhero film, they think it wouldn't fit into the thriller film, more action. What DC Comics seem to do is always seem to find a way to make them more thriller than action, which is very creative. So the brief plot synopsis is: when the menace known as the Joker wreaks havoc and chaos on the people of Gotham, the Caped Crusader must come to the terms with one of the greatest psychological tests of his ability to fight injustice. So using comic book heroes, The Dark Knight still has a very serious tone to its storyline. Having a clear hero as the protagonist and a clear villain as the antagonist makes it easy for the audience to follow the storyline. This is something I need to look into for my storyline, because obviously I want to focus a lot on the protagonist, and I've also had a lot of research on thriller film trailers who don't show their antagonist, which builds tension for the actual film. So though I've said right here it's good to have a clear protagonist and antagonist, having a clear antagonist in my film is not something that I was going for. It's something that I don't really feel is needed in the thriller film, because I feel this will create suspense if not much of the antagonist is shown. I also feel that the protagonist should be well fleshed out, such as Batman in this film, and having it clear that he's the protagonist, which will be clear to the audience because he will be the one most seen on the screen during the trailer. So this should be very obvious to the audience who the protagonist is, and because the idea is to have more than one antagonist in my film, it should be clear that they're the antagonist having the protagonist fight them. So it should be easy for the audience to see protagonist, antagonist, and someone that splits either way, which I'll get into obviously in the next blog post, as I said when I explain my idea for my thriller film. It also keeps the plot simple by having this, but allowing room for its own twists on the formula, making it more interesting for the audience. So even though I said that this has a basic, clear protagonist, clear antagonist, it allows much more room. This simple plotline can be extended in whatever direction they want. So yes, you've got good versus evil, a superhero film, but what Batman the Dark Knight does is it stretches out in its own little ways. So this could mean whether it means adding in new enemies, adding in a plot line where a new character is introduced, which doesn't happen in Dark Knight, it does happen in The Dark Knight Rises. There's lots of different things they can do to kind of keep it fresh for their audience, to keep not only the comic book and superhero film franchise fresh for the audience, so people wanting to come and see more superhero films, which is obviously worked with the MCU and the newly becoming DC universe coming out. This is obviously working. However, it also points out that it can have this kind of serious thriller film tone to it rather than an action film. So as you can see, this basic plotline has been expanded to kind of fit different genres, fit different comic books, and it's just worked really well. And The Dark Knight kind of started this craze, in my opinion, in 2008, obviously. It still keeps slot of action in, but focuses more on the story, which is rare for a superhero film, but manages this well, keeping the story interesting and serious while having action and fight scenes to still keep the audience entertained on what is happening in the film. Though sometimes, when a film is heavily focused on the story, it becomes boring and confusing, making the audience not enjoy the film because it is too long, and they have to think too much rather than enjoy the film, which I think Batman the Dark Knight did suffer from a little bit. In some cases, I felt that you had to sit down and have such a long period of time dedicated to the film to sit down and watch that film and to understand it. I am inspired by this storyline to make my protagonist and antagonist clear to the audience so they do not get confused, which will make the film much more enjoyable for them. And as I said before, it makes it much more easier for the audience to enjoy the film when it's a much more simple plotline with good versus evil. And then you could just throw in my own twists in there. So by having a simple protagonist and developing that protagonist into something, anything in fact, that I want it to be, whether I want him to be slightly a complete hero or maybe an anti-hero, it doesn't matter, because as long as it's simple, I can develop it in whatever way I want. So keeping the storyline simple and having a clear protagonist and a clear antagonist is the inspiration I've gathered from The Dark Knight. So the next film there is to talk about, of typical of the thriller film storylines I'm looking into, is a fairly underrated thriller film that isn't spoken about much. It gets a lot of hate, it also gets a lot of love. It depends on how the person looks at it, but I decided to look at it because I think it's a very unique film, and I think it made a very bold move in its storyline that had never been seen before this point, and I give this film much respect because of it. So this film, of course, I'm talking about is Phone Booth, released in 2002, and obviously I'll go through the plotline. So Stuart Shepard finds himself trapped in a phone booth, pinned down by an executionist sniper rifle. So Phone Booth storyline is based in one location, which is a twist on a classic thriller film / action film. Obviously, because usually you see many different locations in any type of film, not just thriller films. In any type of film, you usually see more than one location. Even in some live theatres, you usually see more than one location. But obviously, this doesn't relate to live theatre, because obviously most of live theatre is set in one room. In most cases, however. So So this is the thing I meant by a bold move. I think it's a very bold move to have this kind of pushing it into one location. It's something that I don't think I've ever seen in any other film other than this film off the top of my head. And I just feel that you have to keep a high level intensity to have the film based in one location, as well as kind of keeping the film interesting for the audience to watch. And I feel that Phone Booth does this very well because, yes, you sit in one location, and to make that fact that that location is a very small phone box as well, to keep the audience entertained in that is something spectacular, I think. And keeping all the twists and turns in there really made the writers stand themselves out in this film to make sure that the audience is kept interested through the film without making them getting bored. However, this does kind of have a drawback, the fact that the film time, the runtime, is fairly short compared to some other films. I think it's only 77 minutes, which is very short compared to most films nowadays being at least 120, just under, just over. But nevertheless, it's still a great film. I thought this was a nice change to see how he dealt with the situation as he's trapped in a phone booth, and they managed to keep the film interesting in this one location. However, some people may think the film is boring in this one location, as it limits the film from all of its full potential, which is why I feel I will not use the one location in my trailer, as I will use multiple to keep the audience interested in the story fresh. Though, as I said, I respect this film for making this bold move and think that it was a very good thing to change up the thriller film genre and to change up what people thought and what they expected to see in a thriller film. However, I do not feel like I want to use it because I feel that I don't have the skill or the writing ability in order to make a film interesting in one location. If it was a short film, however, it may be a different case, but because it's a trailer, I want to keep my film interesting for my audience by showing lots of different locations and my protagonist almost on a journey, rather than just stuck in one location. Though I had ideas for just keeping it in one location, if I think about it logically, I do not think that it would be realistic to me, and I do not feel that it would be beneficial for the audience. I do not feel they'll enjoy it, and therefore there'll be no point in making a film that no one will enjoy. To its core, this film has a very simple storyline, but it does raise a lot of questions within the storyline. So it does keep the audience guessing and gets them engaged with the film. So overall, because of this, I am inspired by this film with this bold move it made. Though I do not intend to use the one location, as I want to use many locations to keep the film fresh and the audience interested in following the storyline, I still am inspired to try something out of the ordinary in my thriller film, to excite the audience and create a twist on thriller film franchise, making it new and exciting to the audience. So I feel that though I do not want to use the one location as I've described in this section, I do, however, feel that I want to use something, maybe an editing technique, a camera shot, whatever it may be, maybe even a storyline, to kind of make it a bit more of a twist. I feel that with thriller films and horror films and all genres becoming repetitive, you've got to keep something fresh in there for the audience, and I feel this film has inspired me to make something fresh and to come up with something original in order to create a new and a fresh thriller film, a new thriller film storyline for my target audience to sit down and enjoy. So the next film storyline plot that I want to talk about is another one that I spoke about quite a lot, but I feel that it's very beneficial to me, is in fact Pulp Fiction from 1994. So the lives of two mob hitmen, a boxer and a gangster's wife, and a pair of dinner bandits intertwine in four tales of violence and redemption. This storyline follows a number of different mini-stories in the plot of this film. So straight away, this is something different for the thriller film genre, and allows seeing a situation in multiple people's views and seeing that they are their own views in a problem situation. So straight away, as you can tell from that, this is something much like Phone Booth, something to change up the thriller film franchise. And personally, I really like this idea. I like the idea of seeing a situation from multiple different people's views. It's something that's always interested me as a film fan, a movie goer. However, because having this kind of different storytelling. They all have different plots, but they all round up into the same plot in this film. So having kind of these kind of subplots in this overarching plot made the storyline very in-depth for us to follow, and it also made it very interesting because you had these subplots which each of these four characters, well not four characters but four tales had to encounter, yet they all led up to this kind of overarching plot line as such, some linking more than others, but at the end of the day they all link in some way to the same kind of problem that all of them are facing. And this is something so fresh that people had not seen before, and obviously took a new take on the thriller film franchise, which I think people really enjoy. So overall, I think straight away this shows how to make an interesting plotline for the audience by having not just one plotline, but maybe a big plotline with loads of little mini subgenre plotlines in them to keep the film fresh, keep it interesting, and keep them a lot of things going on. You can make this in your own favour to make it have more action, or in your own favour to make it have more of an in-depth story, more characters. There's so many ways and opportunities you can use this to your advantage that it would be a very beneficial thing to use. So this was interesting for the audience to watch, as different stories made for action and more storyline, meaning there was a lot for the audience to take in. And this could also be a bad thing, however, as it could become too confusing for the audience if not done correctly. And if there's too much going on, then the audience may not enjoy the film because they have to concentrate too hard rather than go into the world the director is trying to tell. So keeping it simpler can allow for more enjoyment of the audience. And obviously I was inspired by this film, because how can you not be inspired by such a unique take on having 4 mini stories? However, with that last statement I made, I do think that if I would try to execute it, especially as this being my first trailer I've ever created and as being a new and fairly underexperienced filmmaker, I feel that maybe trying to be too eager and too over the top could result in my trailer actually becoming worse than if I just keep it to the simples and keep it to the basics. I feel that if I work to my strengths, it could become better. So keeping a simple storyline like I described in the Batman section, the Dark Knight section of this video, I feel will actually be more beneficial to me in the long run. Though this is such a great idea, such a unique idea, and I really do like it, and I am inspired to try something like this in the future, for now I feel like I should keep to the basics and keep to my strengths by keeping a simple storyline but developing the characters to go further to make it more entertaining for my audience and allowing my audience to connect more with the characters and the storyline of my thriller film through the trailer. The next film is another one that I've discussed quite a lot, yet this one is another one like The Nice Guys that really relates into the storyline that I have going in my mind. Though they all do in some way, and all of them have inspired me in some way, there are some that take a more direct approach to my storyline, and Taken is definitely, much like The Nice Guys, one of these storylines that have really inspired me and impacted me making my thriller film trailer. And also Taken is a thriller film this time, so a lot of the aspects are much easier to take in rather than they were in The Nice Guys. In The Nice Guys they're a bit harder because it's a different genre, whereas Taken being the same genre as what I'm making, it was a lot easier to take inspiration from this and make it into my own ideas, and just generally making it easier to be inspired and to use the ideas from Taken in my thriller film trailer plotline. So a retired CIA agent travels across Europe and relies on his old skills to save his estranged daughter, who has been kidnapped while on a trip to Paris. So Taken takes a fairly generic take on thriller films, just having a more revenge story. And I feel that, much like I said in The Dark Knight, I feel this actually works for thriller films. I feel not overcomplicating the film can actually make it more beneficial to the audience. If you kind of create these storylines that had too much going on, and though The Dark Knight was such a great film and had such a great story and just characters and everything about that film was amazing, you do feel like you have to sit down and concentrate on the film so much, which I feel actually takes away from the film. Whereas Taken is more of a film that you can flick on and just have a good time with. You can, if you have to turn it off and rewatch it from a certain point. You don't feel like you have to rewatch the whole film because you know the basic storyline because it's so simple. You also feel you can switch on the film without having to feel that you have to write an essay or take down an essay in your head of what's going on. You can just watch it for what it is. And yes, sometimes films like this aren't always the best critically acclaimed films, but some of the best box office films aren't actually the greatest films of all time, but just have something to keep the audience entertained, as well as the good storyline and good characters. So overall, I thought this is a great way to take inspiration from this film. This is what I would like to do for my trailer, as I feel it is a safe bet, which with a betrayal storyline added in there too, could create a nice twist on the formula, which still making sure I do not become too ambitious. So as I keep saying throughout this video, I do not want to become too ambitious for an early filmmaker. I want to kind of keep to my strengths in order to make the best possible trailer for my audience. And to do this, I feel that the betrayal storyline that I kind of have bubbling in my head, as well as this kind of revenge story, having the two mixed in there could create what I was talking about with the phone booth, that kind of unique original take. Because there's a lot of revenge stories and there's kind of a lot of betrayal, but mashing the two together could create something special. Now, this is nothing to say that this is definitely going to happen, but it most certainly say that I am more than happy to try this and try to create something special out of the storyline that I have going in my head. So the fact that he's after the people that took his daughter makes it much more personal to him, making the audience relate to the character, because most of them would try to find the one that they love, even if it's a dangerous task. So having this kind of brave protagonist who is relatable, yes, he has skills from his previous job, which modern day people may not have, but having this kind of idea of going after your daughter, your own daughter. If you're in that theatre and the target audience is older men and you have the daughter, of course they're going to go after their daughter. That's their daughter. And for us as younger generations, we understand that they probably would do that. If we were to lose our little sister or our girlfriend or something along those lines, us as an audience would relate and want to go and try and help in some way, even if it is the most dangerous task. Just having that kind of the fear just gets blocked out by the kind of revenge and the hatred for the people that have done this, blocks out the fear and makes you do remarkable things. And I feel that that really does make the audience inspired and connect to this film. The storyline is gripping and also quite realistic, which makes the audience connect with the film even more, and making it actually a little scary thinking that this could happen to them in real life. It makes the storyline much more intense and suspenseful, making the audience interested in the film because of all the action and suspense it holds for them to enjoy and get into the film, which has developed characters. I actually really like the storyline, as I feel like, as I said, the simplicity of it and just the basic characters make it easier for the audience to follow. And I'm massively inspired by the kind of family relations in this film. Having the kind of family aspect of it land which connects the audience to the character, I feel it's like I want to use and have my protagonist have something to do with his family in this betrayal revenge story, and having him want to go after his family or save his family or some kind of remorse on his family. Any one of those could kind of connect the audience with my protagonist and make them more engaged in the film, which I think is something that I feel that you really need to add in a thriller film. Keep the audience engaged and intrigued and connected with the film and the characters is something crucial, and especially if you do this in a trailer, it will almost definitely make your target audience want to come and see the full film. The next film is Misery. This is the final film storyline I will be analysing / gathering inspiration from, and it's just a film that kind of takes a different approach from all the films that I've talked about so far, yet I'm still inspired by it by certain aspects in it, which I will now discuss. So Misery was released in 1990, and the storyline goes as followed. After a famous author is rescued from a car crash by a fan of his novels, he comes to the realization that the care he is receiving is the only beginning of a nightmare of captivity and abuse. What makes this film different is the fact that the people focus on two people, one is the victim, Paul Sheldon, and one is the evildoer, which is Annie Wilkes. And this kind of has a flip on the system, having the woman looking more powerful than the man being an antagonist and showing a weak man as the protagonist, which was something new to the thriller film genre. So the way that they kind of flip the stereotypical, having the protagonist as actually being very weak, yes, still maybe he's very weak and inferior to the antagonist, who is very big and bold and who is a woman. And having the woman kind of have control of the situation over the man was something that in the 1990s people hadn't really seen in cinema before. And in a way, this made the film even more terrifying, thinking that this kind of man cannot fend off this psychotic woman because of the condition he's in, which led to great intense scenes, as well as this kind of building of a character, especially showing Annie's schizophrenic ways, having her flip on him at any time, made the plot and storyline of him wanting to escape much more thrilling. And because of the way he was being treated and the way that it was generally terrifying, the whole plot is based around him trying to get out of this situation, and the audience completely are there in the film and backing him, especially the first viewing of this film, because you don't know if he's actually going to get out alive, because all the stunts she keeps pulling out, and it does get quite gruesome when, you know, she breaks his feet and he gets stuck in the wheelchair, and it just makes him even less likely to escape this woman. And it really does build a suspense that a thriller film should definitely have, and it's just something that massively inspired me. So as I said, this has inspired me to go outside the box. And though I would like to use a male protagonist, as it having a male protagonist is, yes, stereotypical, but I feel it fits in with my storyline more, especially with what happens in the storyline. I feel that a male protagonist may be the way forward. And I want to show something not normally seen in my trailer, and not normally seen in a thriller film in my trailer, to keep the audience interested and keep the thriller film genre alive with something new and for the audience to watch and to make sure they come and see the full film. So no, I do not plan to have a woman antagonist or even have a woman protagonist. Nothing like that. But the fact that this film had the bold move to kind of switch the stereotypical sides around has kind of made me want to go outside the box by maybe having two antagonists rather than two protagonists, but not working for each other. Having a betrayal story, having someone betray their friend in not the comical fashion. And just generally having something that maybe the protagonist does or has done that is something different to what has people seen before. And overall, I feel this will create this kind of world that people can get involved in my thriller film trailer. And it will kind of just relate into everything that I've researched to kind of make this overall great thriller film with new techniques and new things to excite the audience, to keep the thriller film genre alive and to make people enjoy the trailer and want to come and see the full film. Overall, all of these films are different from one another, but are all brilliant in their own right. They all have fantastic storylines and plots to keep their audience interested in the film and to capture the attention of their target audience. They provide extremely good entertainment and keep it interesting and intense from start to finish, showing how story aspects and intense moments in the trailer to give a glimpse to the audience of what they can look forward to and expect from the filmmaking, from the trailer, making them want to go and see the final film, which is at the end of the day what a trailer is supposed to do for its audience.